Darcy Luoma served as the director of United States Senator Herb Kohl's office for 12 years before launching Darcy Luoma Coaching and Consulting, where she and her team have worked with more than 500 organizations in 48 industries to create high-performing people and teams by solving their people problems. While Darcy has a double major in German and mathematics, the only time she uses these skills is when trying to double a recipe for a German Black Forest cake. She discovered her love of coaching while doing her master's thesis at Pepperdine University on the impact of coaching. She's a master certified coach who designed the rigorous certified professional coach program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and now serves as the director of training. She was honored to be voted Madison, Wisconsin's favorite coach 4 times. Darcy is in her 23rd season of doing triathlons of every length, including a full Ironman. Her lifetime love of being physically fit for the body created the spark for her model of being thoughtfully fit for the mind. When she isn't training her body or mind, she loves spicy chai lattes, afternoon naps, and yin yoga. But her most important and most challenging role is being mom to 2 energetic and spunky teenage daughters who somehow convinced her to get a 90-pound foster dog to ensure their COVID quarantine didn't get boring. In the past year, they've now had 8 fosters. She's author of the book, Thoughtfully Fit, Your Training Plan for Life and Business Success. And she's here today to help you be thoughtfully fit. Please join me in welcoming Madison's favorite life coach and professional yoga napper, Darcy Luoma. In January, I was talking to a client, we'll call her Sue, and she said, oh, God, Darcy, this whole pandemic just feels like a marathon, not a sprint, don't you think? And I paused for a moment and said, yeah, I get your sentiment for sure. However, as a 6-time marathon finisher, I see it a little differently. In a marathon, you train and practice, so you're ready. And you also know when it's going to end at 26.2 miles, so you can pace yourself. Right now, we don't know if we're on mile 3 or mile 20. And for most of us, we certainly did not prepare or train for this global pandemic. Life is challenging enough, but then you layer on top of it a global pandemic, and it makes everything harder. Our company focuses on creating high-performing people and teams and solving people problems. And we found that those people problems that were already there became even more elevated. Trying to social distance and still communicate with your customers and your colleagues. Working remotely and trying to figure out how to communicate effectively when you can't just walk down the hallway to your colleague's door and say, hey, do you got a minute? I'm a little frustrated. It has presented challenges that many of us didn't train or prepare for. And I found with my clients that when the pandemic first hit, there was a range of emotions, starting out with just pure shock and frustration and disbelief. Wait, you mean I have to work from home and my kids are going to be doing school from home and my spouse or my roommate? How is that going to work? There was a lot of sadness. What do you mean we're not going to be able to have our senior graduation for my son? There's no prom. Oh, I can't get my hair cut? That business trip that I was going to go on that I was planning forever is canceled? There was some denial. But as the time went on, the range of emotions continued to expand, where I started to notice some clients having joy. Oh my gosh, Darcy, I do not miss the 40-minute commute each way to the office. This is fantastic. I started to notice gratitude. I can take my dog for a walk in the middle of the day instead of needing to bring her to the kennel. We're eating dinner as a family. And now some hope. Gosh, maybe the world is opening back up. Maybe things are going to go back to a new normal. So I'm curious, how are you feeling? What is your range of emotions? And where are you today? And I want to just normalize and honor wherever you are is fine. Because the reality is we have challenges, we have hurdles, we have crises. Life is unpredictable and the unexpected happens. You get a layoff notice. Maybe one of your family members is diagnosed with cancer. Your project is delayed due to the hurricane and the lack of supplies. A team member leaves for another company. Your department is struck with COVID and you have to figure out how to be productive on a reduced staff. Life is messy. Life is hard. Challenges happen. We don't control what happens, but we do control what happens next. And how you respond when there is a crisis, when somebody lets you down, when somebody blindsides you, when there is a challenge, big or small, will determine whether you flourish or whether you falter. That's what we're going to explore today. We're going to look at how you can handle yourself thoughtfully, no matter what life throws at you, so you can get back to doing what you do best. Instead of having to go up and clean up the mess from when you didn't handle yourself so thoughtfully in the first place. And now you have more people problems. You're going to leave with a training plan and 3 simple steps that will help you, that you can apply immediately to engage your core so that you can train to handle anything. Because just like if you decide that you want to run a marathon, you couldn't wake up tomorrow and do it. You have to train and practice. In the same way, you can train and practice to be thoughtfully fit. And when you do, you'll be able to handle yourself thoughtfully in any situation. Speaking of marathons, have you ever run a marathon? Or maybe you've gone to cheer for one or watched one on TV. One of the things that I love about marathons is that everyone cheers for all the runners. In 1998, I ran my first marathon. It was the Rock and Roll Marathon in San Diego. And I had to walk parts of it. And people still cheered. There's like this loud roar that fills the air with energy and adrenaline. People who come to cheer for their dad or their sister or their friend don't cheer it when they pass by and then leave. They keep cheering for everyone. It is fantastic. And there's one key difference from other sports. Can you guess what it is? It's actually the opposite of cheering for everyone, even the players on the other team. Yeah, that's right. If you've ever attended a professional sporting event, you know what I'm talking about. Trash talk. Trash talk comes in many forms. The opposing fans or coaches might yell, "Ah, you can take them. They're looking tired. Their defense is weak. They'll be easy to tackle. They don't know what they're doing. You're going down." Yeah, I heard all of those when I was playing sports in high school. And certainly when I go and attend professional games. But there's one thing I have noticed working with clients at every level of an organization, from the front line to the managers to the C-suite level. You don't have to go to a game in order to hear that trash talk. Most of us, probably all of us, based on my experience, have our own trash talk right in our head. Those voices that chime in and say, "You can't do this. You're not good enough." That prevent us from being able to succeed, to flourish, to handle ourselves thoughtfully in every situation. And so it's not enough to just be good at the game, to be good at your job. You also have to be good at staying mentally focused so that you can continue to do what you do best instead of being distracted by these sabotaging thoughts. So in and of itself, it's not a terrible thing to have this inner trash talk. You're human. That's natural. That happens. Something happens and we have thoughts, inner thoughts, a first thought that oftentimes is sabotaging. What makes this challenging is the fact that our thoughts lead to our actions. And so if you're not aware of your thoughts and you're just on autopilot, those sabotaging thoughts can lead to sabotaging actions. Actions that mean you're not handling yourself thoughtfully. When you're thoughtfully fit, you're able to notice those thoughts and then choose your response instead of acting on autopilot. And it doesn't come naturally. It's something that you need to train for and to practice, because our thoughts are so automatic, they just come. So imagine for a moment that you had a tough day at work. You're stressed out. You got to get home because you know that you have a busy evening. You have to have dinner and then get the kids to their soccer and volleyball practice and then get over to your volunteer board meeting. You're about to leave the office and you pick up that phone call and it's an angry colleague. And now, not only are you stressed about your day, you're now late because you took that call and it took longer than you thought. So you hop in your car, you drive home, and of course there's tremendous traffic because you didn't leave the office when you were planning to. You walk in through the kitchen door and notice your spouse reading the newspaper. You trip over the shoes. Kids aren't there ready to go. Dinner's not ready. And you start spewing all this negativity. You guys, right? I don't know if you can imagine this. And it kind of spirals and it escalates from there. Can you relate? So chances are you were having some thoughts as you were driving home. Oh, I'm having a bad day. If the house is a mess, I'm gonna blow. Oh my gosh, why am I the one who has to do everything? These thoughts are normal. It means you're human. But these thoughts then lead to your actions. Let's take a look at another example. Imagine for a moment that you are checking your email after watching this presentation. And you see an email that comes in from a colleague that says this: I've been thinking about that meeting and I'm really disappointed. You weren't prepared, and that can't happen again. Okay, you haven't even had your second cup of coffee yet. And what's worse is that you notice they copied your entire team and your boss. What would you think in this situation? What is the first thought that comes to your mind? Maybe you read it and immediately think, what a jerk. Who does he think he is? And you pound out an edgy response and hit reply all. Your first thought is anger, so you react impulsively. Now you have a bigger people problem. Or maybe your first thought is, oh, geez, he's right. God, I can't do anything right. I might as well quit because I'll never be successful in this job. And your action is to apologize and let them know you'll fix it right away, even though the problem was someone else's. Our thoughts lead to our actions. The key is to recognize, is this thought serving me or sabotaging me? Because when you can become aware of that thought and whether it's serving you or sabotaging you, you then can explore your choices in that moment and you can focus on what you control instead of just being on autopilot when you don't even recognize that thought and it just happens and it leads to an action. As a matter of fact, I started to notice after coaching thousands of hours that all of my clients had similar challenges, similar hurdles, and that their thoughts would get in the way and create and contribute, add fuel to the fire of those challenges. And so I spent years researching and categorizing all of the obstacles that my clients brought to me. And I created a model, thoughtfully fit, based on those top 6 hurdles that I heard that every client that comes to me experiences one or more or of these hurdles. Some of you, as I go through and share what these hurdles are, some of you may experience all 6 before the weekend because we're human. This is what happens. And so I want to share with you, and as I do, I want you to be reflecting on which of these hurdles most resonate with you. All right, ready to go? So first hurdle, I don't always handle myself the way I'd like. Can you relate to that? You're coming home on a stressful day, and instead of taking a breath and walking through the kitchen door and smiling and saying, hey, everybody, we got a busy night. What's going on? You instead spew all that negativity. Whoops, sorry about that. This means your hurdle is a lack of strength. In the thoughtfully fit model, strength is about being able to consciously choose how you handle yourself in any situation. Second hurdle. I'd be fine if only you were different. Can you relate to that? If only your boss would smile when you came in the morning. If only your roommate would just put the dishes in the dishwasher, you could be happy. Your biggest hurdle then is a lack of flexibility. Flexibility in the thoughtfully fit model is being able to stretch to accept others just as they are. Instead of spending all this time and energy being frustrated that they're not a way you think they should be. And using all this negative energy, judging them, or worse, trying to change them to be something you think they should be. Ready for hurdle number 3? Clients come in and have relationships that don't work. Can you relate to this one? This is when you might be over-functioning in the relationship and somebody else is under-functioning, so that you have a lack of balance. What that means is your relationships are out of balance. Instead of finding that win-win and achieving alignment in the relationship, it may be a win-lose. Maybe you're a high D dominant on that disc profile and you're a bully and you're coming in and you're going to get your way. And sure, you win and the other person loses. Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe you are the one that always wants to appease the other person. And you say, oh, it's okay. No, it's no problem. I'll take care of it. And you're losing and the other person's always winning, which in the moment might feel okay. Like, okay, I'm right. I'm taking one for the team. But over the long run, you get resentful and angry. That's common as a hurdle that your relationships are out of balance. Next hurdle that my clients bring in that I want to see if you can relate to is I react poorly when blindsided. You go into that board meeting and somebody criticizes you and you're caught off guard and you react. Well, I didn't know that, right? You get defensive. You maybe blame somebody else. You get critical back. This, on the thoughtfully fit model, is a lack of agility. And agility is about being able to handle yourself thoughtfully in any situation. You get blindsided, and instead of reacting and having a knee-jerk reaction, you pause in the moment to think and take a breath and calmly act and say, oh gosh, okay, I can hear you're frustrated and let me address that. Thank you for bringing that up. Next hurdle, I feel stuck. Can you relate? I have clients that come in and they're stuck in a project that feels bogged down because others aren't lifting their weight or meeting their deadlines. They feel stuck in a job that's limiting, feel stuck in a marriage that's unfulfilling. I have clients that come in and feel stuck, and that aligns with the thoughtfully fit practice of endurance. And endurance is about being able to overcome obstacles so that you can get unstuck. It's about embracing a growth mindset so that you can work your way through saying, okay, I don't know how to figure this out yet, but I can if I put my mind to it. I'm not a runner yet. I could train. I can't public speak. Oh my gosh, my boss wants me to present to this group of people. Oh, and you feel stuck because you're like, I'm not a public speaker. If you embrace a growth mindset, you say, okay, I'm not yet, but I can be if I train and practice. And the last hurdle, I think this is the last one. There's so much to do, I can't even think. Can you relate? Your to-do list is overwhelming. And your biggest hurdle is a lack of stillness. You don't have time to think strategically. And so you're running through your day like a hamster on a hamster wheel. This is very common. And all of these 6 hurdles are created because of the thoughts in our head. You can't say no. If you say no to that request, they're not gonna like me. Right? So instead of saying no to create more stillness, those thoughts, those sabotaging thoughts, lead to sabotaging actions. And you take on more than you can handle. And if you do, that's okay. You're normal. That's what happens. So I invite you to think about right now, which hurdles do you experience? Which of these create the biggest obstacles for you? Because life is messy. Challenges happen. We don't respond. We don't choose what happens, but we do choose how to respond to those obstacles. And when you can recognize your hurdles in the moment and notice your thoughts, you can change your pattern and you can change that autopilot response to handle yourself thoughtfully. Because when you understand and have greater awareness about your biggest hurdles, you then have access to different actions instead of being blindsided and just reacting unconsciously. And so I want to invite you to take a quiz that will help you understand your biggest hurdle. And so right now, if you'd like, you can take out your phone and open up your text messages so that you can take this quiz to identify your biggest hurdle. And when you open up your messaging app, in the to line, where you would normally send a note maybe to your spouse, you can put in 33444. And where you type your message, maybe saying, hey, are you ready? We got a crazy night. Can you make sure dinner's done when I get home? You're just going to type in hurdle. And when you hit send, you'll get a text back asking for your email address. If you reply with your email address, we will email you a link to this quiz that you can take right now. It's a short 2-minute quiz to identify your biggest hurdle. And also some tips on what can you do to overcome that hurdle. You'll also get signed up for my weekly Thoughtfully Fit tips that come out every Wednesday that provide a case study from a client's life, from my life, from an organization about where there's a struggle on how to be thoughtfully fit and what to do. And if your life's overwhelming and you get the newsletter a few weeks and you want to unsubscribe, you can do that at any time. But hopefully it will provide you some inspiration and some weekly reminder to recognize your thoughts so that you can handle yourself thoughtfully in any situation. Some of you may be watching this, sitting there saying, okay, this is all fine, Darcy. You can say that we don't control what happens, but we do control our response and how we choose to handle any adversity. And you might be sitting there saying, that's all fine, but you don't know my life. You don't know my challenges. And you're right, I don't. And I'm going to guess that some of you have some really big challenges. And I'd love to have you stay with me here to recognize the power you have in those challenges, even when it feels like you're powerless and like you have no choices and there's nothing that you control. Because I want to share a story with you that I had to handle. And I know a thing or two about overcoming challenges, extreme challenges. What my life changed in an instant when I got a phone call from my neighbor. I was at an event and she called and said, Darcy, what is happening at your house? And I said, I don't know why I'm not at home. Well, there's 50 police cars and a SWAT team, and they just went in and took out your husband in handcuffs, and he was barefoot and he wouldn't look at us. I said, what? John, what are you talking about? That phone call started my worst nightmare. Well, it wasn't even a worst night. I didn't even have nightmares that were that bad. With that phone call, I later found out that my husband was arrested for sexual assault of a minor he had met online. He was a full-time stay-at-home dad to our 2 young daughters, and he was ripped from our lives on that day, never to come home again. All of a sudden, I had to figure out how to be a single mom. My husband did everything. He took the girls to their haircuts, to Girl Scout cookies, to 4-H, to swim team practice. He did all the cooking, the cleaning, he washed the clothes. I had to figure out how to navigate the legal system. I never watched CSI or Law and Order. I had no idea what to do. I had to figure out how to get divorced, which was worse because our 10-year anniversary was the next day. And we were planning to leave for a week-long RV trip throughout the country to visit all of the state parks with our daughters. I had to figure out how to keep my business alive, how to learn how to cook and use the washing machine. All of a sudden, I had the biggest crisis I could ever have imagined. Talk about people problems and sabotaging thoughts. It was overwhelming. And I had to figure out, how do I explore my choices? And how can I focus on what I control? At a time where I felt like I had no choices. I felt like everything was out of my control. What's crazy is that 5 days before my husband's arrest, I had just finalized my Thoughtfully Fit model. My colleague Jill was in my office. John was there. We had all these flip charts and Post-its everywhere. And we're like, yes, this is it. We were so excited to put Thoughtfully Fit out into the world. That next day, I hired a strategic planning consultant and a publicist to help us figure out how to do that. And then 5 days later, my life stopped. There were media trucks for days outside of my house. There was my husband's mugshot every night on the nightly news and in the newspaper. It got so bad that I ended up sending my daughters to another state to live with my sister, and I gave her legal custody until I could work through all of this. And I became ground zero to test drive Thoughtfully Fit. Because my attorney, I had to also hire an attorney. My attorney said, Darcy, don't talk to anybody about anything. This is severe. And so I went from having a therapist and friends and my parents and all these people who I would regularly go to help me manage and work through challenges, to being alone and having to figure this out because I couldn't talk to anybody. That model, Thoughtfully Fit, helped me through that crisis. And what I'm going to share with you next are the 3 steps that you can do to help you through any crisis as well. As a matter of fact, in the last 5 years, I have worked on and written a book on Thoughtfully Fit that was published on June 1st that shares my story and how this model helped me navigate every step of the way. And it gives you strategies and specific tools and case studies to help you navigate your challenges. So if you want to go deeper after today's workshop, you can order Thoughtfully Fit and go deeper. Because here's the good news. Our sabotaging thoughts don't need to lead to sabotaging actions. Those thoughts that we have, our first thoughts, are normal. And they don't have to lead the show. So let me be your coach to help you to get thoughtfully fit so that you can take control and you can focus on your choices in any situation. And what we're going to look at is how you can engage your core, your thoughtfully fit core. Now, when you're physically fit, thoughtfully fit is a metaphor for being physically fit. When you're physically fit, every movement is easier, right? Whether it's going for a run or taking the stairs, if the elevator's out. And if you have a strong core, you're less likely to get injured. You can also put your own suitcase up on the overhead bin. Well, thoughtfully fit also has a core. And when you're thoughtfully fit, your life feels easier, your relationships feel easier. And when you have a strong core, you're also less likely to get injured. You're less likely to have conflict and challenging situations that you make worse because you aren't engaging your core, right? That's what we're looking at. We don't control when bad things happen, but we do control how we respond and what choices we have in that moment and what we choose to do, so that we either are, and our choices either throw fuel on the fire or they throw water on it. They either ramp it up and make it worse, or they start to calm it down to make it better. So let's take a look. What we're going to do is explore how you can engage your core in 3 simple steps that you can apply immediately. When you leave this session, you can start to engage your core. Because what's key? Just like if you want to build a strong physical core, you can't just do 20 sit-ups once a month and be like, oh, I'm done. You have to train and practice and be consistent. But if you decide that you want to really build your core and you do 20 sit-ups every day, all of a sudden, I mean, at first, it'll be hard. You'll be sore. But all of a sudden, after a couple of days, you'll start to notice that they're getting easier. And after a week or 2, you notice, gosh, I'm not sore anymore. I think I can do more than 20. And so you up your game and you do 40 sit-ups. And you're like, wow, oh my God, how am I doing this? In the same way, when you train and practice to engage your core, it gets easier. So you start on the little things so that you're strong to handle the big things. So I want to invite you to reflect on right now, which do you do best? Most of us have a default, one of these that comes most naturally to us. When there's a crisis, are you really good at hitting the pause button? That's great. And our strengths taken to the extreme can become a weakness. So that pause might turn into like a 5-hour Netflix binge where it's actually avoidance. Or maybe you are searching the online sales for REI or whatever your store is. That's my favorite. Or maybe you're really good. Your default is to think. But taken to the extreme, you have analysis paralysis because you think and think and think and overthink. And not only did you come up with a plan A and B, you also come up with a plan C, D, E, and F. Or maybe your default is to act. You're really good in a crisis and you act. You're quick. As a matter of fact, you know that others come to you because you act quickly. But taken to extreme, you act too quickly and impulsively, and you overreact, and you have a mess that now you need to go and clean up. Awareness gives you access to new choices and new actions. So reflect on, as I'm going through each of these 3 steps, and as I'm going through the core, which is to pause, think, and act, which one do you do best? And which one do you maybe need to work on? Okay, so let's take a look at the first step. First step is to pause. And this, in some cases, is the most important because it gets you off of autopilot. It's what will help you to not overreact in the moment. Okay, I'm wondering if any of you have ever gone to a kid's softball game. It's so fun to watch. My daughter, Josie, played softball and years ago, and I don't know if she was maybe about 9. And so one day I took her to practice. She wanted to go early to do some batting practice before with the pitching machine before the formal practice with her team started. And so she went and went into the cage. If you've ever gone, it's got this machine that automatically pitches the balls. And the balls started coming at her fast and furiously. And she's like dodging them and trying to hit the balls. And I'm watching this going, what is going on? And it's just like insane. It's chaos. And what she didn't know is that the pitching machine was set to the high school varsity girls level who were playing it before her. And so she ran up to the machine and hit the pause button and recognized that it was set too high and dialed it back. I'm wondering, where in your life are you on autopilot and things are coming fast and furious? Where do you need to hit that pause button? That's the essential first step to engaging your core. Because the first thing you learn how to do in any new sport, right? Thoughtfully fit is a metaphor, and it's about how to be physically fit. You have to learn how to stop. That is essential so that you can get yourself off of autopilot. Something happens, instead of you reacting in the moment impulsively, you learn to pause instead. You have to learn how to pause. in order to set yourself up for success. And so I want you to think about the pause like a stop sign. When you're driving along and you get to a stop sign, you don't stop and, take out your lunch and return emails. You just pause and raise your awareness. You heighten your awareness, and then you proceed when it's safe to do so. That's the first step in engaging your core, is to hit the pause button. Hitting the pause button sets you up for success to be able to do step 2, which is to think. So one of my daughters played hockey. She played pee-wee hockey, and they had at the end of the season a parents versus kids hockey game. And so she convinced me to suit up and go out and play the game. And oh my gosh, let me tell you, I've never put on hockey skates before, and I didn't even know how to skate, let alone skate with these big gear and huge pads on. And so every time another parent would pass me the puck, I would get it, and I wouldn't think for a second. I would just hit it. I don't care what direction I was facing, if I was facing the opponent's goalie or if I was, passing it to somebody on the other team. I just hit that puck without thinking. You have to take the time to think. I was just on autopilot because I was nervous and it was hard. If you can pause and think, that's going to set you up for better success. And the way you think is by asking thoughtful questions. So something happens, I've already given you 2 questions. You can ask yourself, what do I control? And what are my choices? Because oftentimes when something happens, we feel out of control and we feel like there are no choices, or there's only a black and white choice. There's a good and a bad choice. I can, overreact and yell back at this person, or I can shut down and stonewall and not engage. The reality is there are a lot of choices. And when we can focus on what we control in our choices and think, that gives us access to more actions that we can take. And so that question, when you pause and think, it might be asking yourself, okay, what do I need here? It might be asking yourself, wow, what is triggering me? How can I stay calm? When my husband was arrested, I was just on autopilot. And I had to train myself to hit the pause button, to think. There was a moment when I called another parent to ask a favor if I could bring my daughters there because I couldn't figure out how to get to my keynote speech and get the girls to where they need to go. And so I texted another mom, and instead of texting back, she called me, and I picked up the phone. I said, hey, and she said, I need to know, did you have anything to do with this? Oh my God. Okay, in that moment, I was just in shock. And I wanted to just belt back like, what? How could you even think that? But I had to, in that moment, pause so that I didn't have my knee-jerk reaction to think, okay, what do I need to do right now? She's scared. Her daughter has spent time at our house. I need to remain calm. I said, no, I absolutely didn't. I didn't have anything to do with this at all. If I had not taken the time to pause and think, most certainly I would have overreacted. That's what's essential. And when you can ask yourself those questions and think, it sets you up for success then for step 3, which is to act. And to act thoughtfully based on the new awareness you have from taking the time to think. My daughter, Jaden, did basketball just for one season. She didn't love it. And it's funny because she would get the ball. Somebody would pass the ball to her and she would dribble and she'd pivot and she'd dribble some more and she'd pivot some more. And the other kids are going, I'm open. Come on, pass it to me. Shoot the ball. But she would just think and think and think. You have to remember to take the shot. You can't get stuck in the pause or in the think. If you have a challenging coworker, and instead of reacting in the moment and getting angry with them, you successfully pause and you think, and you come up with a strategy that you know you need to have a tough conversation. And you think about how you're going to set it up. And you think about what you're going to do. But then you think, and you think, and you think some more. You have to actually act and go and have that conversation. You can't get stuck in the pause or the think. That's essential to act. And so I want you to be thinking about where in your life can you engage your core to overcome your hurdles? Where can you hit the pause button to give yourself time to think so that you can act thoughtfully? And that can be anytime. Right now, my daughter just came in. I'm just right now, instead of like, don't do that, I'm recording. Hit the pause button. Do what I call the pause pinch in that moment and think, okay, I could stop recording. I could yell at my daughter. What are my other choices right now? Well, I could just name it. Recognize the fact that, that wasn't planned, right? Things happen that aren't planned, that we don't control. And then act in the moment and just say, oh, wow, thank you, universe, for providing that perfect example to demonstrate how to engage your core in any moment. Because for me, before I started to practice the pause, think, act, I would not have handled something like that thoughtfully. I'm not proud to say it, but I wouldn't have. I would have stopped the recording and I would have went and chewed out my daughter. Didn't you remember that I told you last night I'm going to be recording? And I would have yelled and she would have gotten defensive and it would have been a disaster. Because I'm human, because you're human, because we have thoughts that sabotage us. That's okay. This isn't about trying to stop those thoughts. This is instead about being able to recognize that thought in the moment, being able to pause and think, okay, is this thought serving me or sabotaging me? And then focusing on what do I control and what are my choices? I don't have to have that sabotaging thought lead to a sabotaging action. It's so empowering. It's so powerful. And here's what's key. You just start where you are. If you're feeling like, okay, Darcy, I know it's simple, but it doesn't sound easy, start where you are. Just like if you decided that you want to run a marathon, the first thing you would do, you wouldn't go out tomorrow and run 26.2 miles. You'd start where you are. You'd go buy a new pair of running shoes. And then tomorrow morning, you'd wake up and you'd jog 4 blocks to the next mailbox. And you'd walk home. And the next day, you might go 5 blocks and walk home. And you keep training and practicing until all of a sudden you could run a whole mile and 5 miles and 10 miles, and you'd build up to the place where you can run 26.2 miles without stopping. That's the power of training and practicing. Because when you do it on the little stuff, maybe you're in line at the grocery store and somebody comes and cuts you off. Instead of overreacting or flipping them off or using any of your negative energy on something you don't control, you pause in that moment and you think, okay, maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they've got a sick child at home. It doesn't matter. It's going to be an extra 3 minutes. They've got 3 things in their cart. And you act by smiling and saying, oh, go ahead. Yeah, you're welcome to go before me. When you start and train and practice on the small stuff, it gets easier on the big stuff, like a pandemic. Hopefully you never have something that happens as horrible as having your spouse arrested and imprisoned. But you'll have big stuff that will happen. And that's what your core workout is. When you leave here, that's your training plan, is to start immediately. Maybe you hit the stop button from watching this session and your kid walks in and says something that triggers you in the moment. Instead of overreacting, maybe you pause in the moment. Do the pause pinch. Take a breath and think, okay, how do I want to handle this? I could get mad that they just did that. Or I could smile and say, hey, you know what? Could you just give me a minute? I need to take some notes from this session. And you act thoughtfully. Because when you can pause and think in the moment before you act, you will have the ability to handle yourself thoughtfully so you can get back to doing what you do best instead of wasting more time and energy cleaning up more people problems because of handling yourself impulsively in the moment. It's been 5 years since my husband was arrested, and while I don't handle myself thoughtfully in every situation, every day I train and practice. Every day I focus on trying to pause in the moment to think, what are my choices and what do I control so that I can act thoughtfully. And I falter and I fail, but I tell you what, I do better today than I did yesterday. And I feel so incredibly blessed that my daughters are thriving. They just finished 7th grade and 9th grade, and they are healthy and strong and resilient. And they have a relationship with their dad where they connect with him by phone regularly. Before COVID, they would go visit him in the prison. And I am co-parenting with my ex and have chosen to forgive him and have chosen to move forward in this path by focusing on what I control. I didn't choose for this to happen, and it was horrible, but I am choosing how I want to move forward. And I know that he's my daughter's dad, and he always will be. And the child psychologists all have said to me that regardless of what happens, if the children are not at risk, which thank God they were never at risk with their dad, it's always better for them to have a relationship. So I'm choosing forgiveness, and I'm choosing to focus on what I control. And that's making the best life we can with the cards we were dealt. And so I want to leave you with this quote that I think captures the essence of what we're working on today. Connect to your core and you'll find strength. Act from your core and you'll move mountains. If you have a mount crisis as big as mine, know that there's hope, that you can get through it, that you can train and practice. And I invite you, if this stirred up some thoughts, to reflect on what new awareness are you having and what questions do you have. And maybe you want to journal, or maybe you want to put some comments in the chat box, or maybe you want to call up a colleague or somebody else who is attending this conference to have a discussion about these concepts. And I want to leave you with a high five for hitting the pause button to be here today, to give yourself the time to think so that you can act thoughtfully. It is truly such an honor and such a privilege to share my story with you, to share my Thoughtfully Fit model, to give you hopefully some tools and strategies that you can apply immediately. Because you have homework, right? You've got a training plan. Your 3 steps when you leave here is to focus on hitting the pause button. Not once, but as many times as you can. So you don't pause, think, act tomorrow and then say, whoo, okay, I'm done. You do it over and over and over again. And as you do it, you build your strength. And all of a sudden, what's really cool is that it becomes your new autopilot. It becomes your way of responding in any situation, no matter the crisis, no matter the obstacle, no matter the challenge. Something happens. And you may still have a sabotaging thought. That's okay. The more you train and practice, the more you'll be able to not have that thought lead to your sabotaging action. Your new autopilot will become, take a breath, pause, don't react, think. You may go within for it, and that think might be for 3 seconds to give yourself some new awareness so that you can act thoughtfully. And when you do, you'll get thoughtfully fit. It doesn't end just any more than you go and you train and you do that Ironman, whatever, marathon. You don't then the next day wake up and say, woohoo, I'm done. I'm physically fit. I don't have to run anymore. No, the journey continues. You keep training and practicing to stay physically fit. In the same way, you keep training and practicing to be thoughtfully fit. But the good news is it gets easier. After that marathon, you might go out for a 5-mile run as a cool down as a way to recover. And it's easy. And you remember on your journey, the 5 blocks killed you. It's the same thing with being thoughtfully fit. It'll get easier to pause in the moment. It'll get easier to think and explore your choices and what you control. And it'll get easier to act thoughtfully. I'm Darcy Luoma, And I have so enjoyed the opportunity to share my story in this model with you. Please reach out anytime. I love to hear success stories. I love to hear fabulous failures, because failing is how we learn and grow and move forward. And I hope that you enjoy the quiz and that you enjoyed the Thoughtfully Fit tips. And if you order the Thoughtfully Fit book, I hope that that serves as a tool to help you go deeper in your journey. Thank you so much.